Good evening, everyone. The defense in the Bryan Kohberger case again is asking for more time, and they want to delay the trial. For what now? What is it? It's been 2.5 years. What is the purpose of requesting this trial delay? It seems like they've come up with multiple reasons. But let's not forget, we have these beautiful kids that were murdered. And although Bryan Kohberger is the suspect, he's innocent till proven guilty, or he's presumed innocent. So Judge Hippler, what is he going to do? Is he going to grant this delay? All of a sudden, the defense also finds a great problem with an alternate suspect in this case. They're raising that again, and they've submitted their paperwork for that. Whether or not Judge Hippler allows that is also remains to be seen. So every day it seems that Ann Taylor is she filed the continuance just recently, but she wants to put this case off. She's not prepared. The defense is not ready to go to trial in this. So she keeps putting different motions in to delay this trial. And of course, the NBC documentary, they're using that as an excuse that'll prejudice the jury. I'm sure they can find a jury that didn't watch that documentary. New witnesses, all kinds of things that the defense is trying to delay this trial. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone. The police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, we're deep into the NBA and NHL finals, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on Major League Baseball, UFC, and boxing to tennis and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. So we're just hearing all of these delays. And don't forget, this trial is slated to go forward on August 11th, with jury selection supposed to begin in July. So what is it now that the defense is raising? Well, the alternate suspect. Remember that one? That's the newest one, the alternate suspect, that there's potentially another suspect in this case that must be considered. But is that really true, or is that something that the defense is just bringing up again for another stall? But this is a brief that they had to file that Judge Hippler must rule upon. He must rule whether or not there in fact is credible evidence that there is an alternate suspect. They can't just name a name, pick one out of the hat, and claim that, though they have an alternate suspect, you would disparage an individual who potentially had nothing to do with this. So unless they have real, solid evidence, this again can be viewed apparently, or possibly, as a stall tactic. And I don't think Judge Hippler is going to allow that. But it seems that every day the defense comes up with another possible stall on this case.
Kohberger has requested a special investigation into the supposed leaks in the case in an episode of Dateline. The defense filed a motion requesting a special prosecutor be appointed to do a fair investigation. The defense also stipulates an objection to releasing privileged and confidential information related to the investigation or the case. The prosecution filed a response. The detailed filings were sealed by the judge. A hearing on whether to delay the trial due to the leaks is set for June 18th.
So, again, the Dateline NBC case rears its ugly head again, where potentially witnesses that were on that or leaks that gave information to Dateline NBC about this case will prejudice the jury. I don't know whether we believe that or not. Is that something that they can't find a jury that hasn't seen the Dateline NBC documentary? I think they can. So again, I'm believing because look, 2.5 years has gone by since the occurrence, right? So November 13th, 2022. So 2.5 years has gone by since the incident. And then, of course, Bryan Kohberger was arrested at the end of December. I believe it was December 30th, 2022. So he's been in jail for all that time. And of course, early on, if you talk about the speedy trial, that was waived by the defense. So there's no expectation of a speedy trial. So the defense keeps putting this off. This is from Good Morning America in regards to the Dateline NBC witnesses.
Kana Whitworth has the story. Good morning, Kana.
Yeah, George, good morning. The docuseries is called One Night in Idaho, The College Murders, and it reveals exactly what happened the morning after the murders, the panic, fear, and chaos of uncovering the most brutal crime that Moscow had ever seen and how those closest to the victims learned of the tragedy.
This morning, an exclusive first look at a new docuseries revealing what happened the morning after 4 University of Idaho students were murdered in an off-campus home.
Nobody could have imagined what was about to happen.
The friends who were first on scene telling their story in Prime Video's One Night in Idaho, The College Murders.
We were a big group of friends. Why would you target those 4?
Emily Lott, her boyfriend Hunter Johnson, and roommate Josie Louderin lived just down the street from the King Road house. And on that November morning, they say one of the surviving roommates called, saying she was scared, asking them to come over.
When Dylan had called, I didn't think it was urgent. So I started walking to Xana's house. And when we got there, Dylan and Bethany had exited the house.
Seeing her friends sitting in the driveway, Emily knew right away something was wrong.
They frightened, just kind of like just hands on their mouth, like, I don't know what's going on type thing.
Hunter immediately went to investigate.
When I was going up the stairs, Hunter Johnson was already in the house. We were just a bit behind.
As soon as I stepped in the house, I was like, oh, something is so not right. Like you could feel it almost.
They didn't know it yet, but their very best friends, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Madison Mogan, had all been murdered. Hunter was the first to realize the tragedy, and he's heard on the 911 call rushing everyone outside. Ethan was the eldest of triplets, and his siblings, Hunter and Maisie, were also attending the University of Idaho. They were called to the home amid the panic. But it would be hours before they would all learn what really happened to their friends. And now they were trying to understand the worst homicide the small town of Moscow, Idaho, had ever seen.
There's this person out there who had just murdered our brother, and he's still out there somewhere.
Now, Ethan's parents and siblings featured in that series, and later this month, we'll have a chance to speak with them along with Hunter and Emily. Maddie's parents were also interviewed for the series. One Night in Idaho, The College Murders, premieres July 11th on Prime Video. And you guys, that is exactly 1 month before this trial is set to start, guys.
So, there's another reason, again, Antel is going to use for, this Prime Video of One Night in Idaho. Again, prejudicial. Can she get a jury? And in addition, I believe the date is July 14th. James Patterson, the famous author James Patterson, New York Times bestseller who sold millions of books in his writing career, his book is coming out about this on July 14th. So there's going to be more information, more reasoning perhaps, that Ann Taylor can use as another reason to put off this trial. Oh, it's too prejudicial. Look at all the information coming out. We can't possibly get a fair trial. But this is not going to stop. So I believe 2.5 years is a sufficient time for Ann Taylor and her defense team to present a fair, a good, a robust defense for Bryan Kohberger. Not waiting, as Judge Hippler would say, to the 11th hour to present some new information, or perhaps not even new information, but information that for the casual observer or the outsider, or even people that have been following this case religiously, seems like a stall tactic for the defense. And if the defense needed more time, why didn't they raise this subject a year ago and ask for more personnel, more help, more investigators, more attorneys to work this case? But Ann Taylor hasn't. But at the 11th hour, she is now requesting more time and a delay of this trial. I find it offensive that that's actually going to happen, or that's what she's requesting. This is from Law and Crime Fix with Annette Levy. This was just coming out today.
To defend himself. I look at what Koberger wants, the evidence we know about so far, and the drama that's been unfolding behind the scenes. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Annette Levy. Jury selection in Bryan Kohberger's quadruple murder trial, it's scheduled to begin at the end of July, and voir dire, that's the questioning of potential jurors, is scheduled to begin August 4th. It's not far off, but Kohberger's lawyers, they hope that Judge Stephen Hippler will give them a continuance. Kohberger's lead attorney, Ann Taylor, she says she's simply not ready for trial, despite turning over expert reports for both the trial phase and a possible penalty phase. That's where jurors would consider sentencing Kohberger to death or life in prison if he's found guilty. Kohberger's lawyers say he maintains his innocence in the brutal stabbing deaths of Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle at the house on King Road in Moscow, Idaho. The murders, carried out in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, absolutely rocked the community in the small college town. And the murders shattered the lives of the 4 victims' families and friends. Now, I've told you many times, many times, that police and prosecutors say that they linked Bryan Kohberger to the murders by identifying a single source of male DNA found on this part of the inner snap of a K-bar knife sheath, similar to this one. Very, very similar, just like...
I just like to say that is how the single source DNA on the button of the knife sheath, which just so happened, if you connect the dots, he ordered that knife sheath and a K-bar knife and a sharpener on Amazon. So there's connected dots, circumstantial evidence that is very powerful, right? So it wasn't just, I know Annette Levy tried to simplify it. They connected him simply from that one piece of evidence, but there is more evidence that then connects it even further. And in addition, we have other pieces of evidence that connect him to 23 times that the FBI has him in the vicinity of that house, more or less reconning 1122 King Road. So it's not simply just, let's not believe it's just simply that single source piece of DNA on the button of the knife sheath. That's a little bit disingenuous to say that. There's a lot more evidence than just that single source piece of DNA, all right? So, and then of course we compare some of the other evidence we're talking about that they received later on, but absolutely the DNA, the single source DNA on the button of that knife sheath did absolutely establish probable cause. And then you remember early on in this investigation, they were looking for a white Hyundai Elantra. And initially, early on in the investigation, they said they just want to speak to the owner of that car because he's a potential witness. We all remember that. I mean, I didn't believe that for a second, but so there's another piece of evidence. There's numerous other pieces of circumstantial evidence, and of course, later on we have the picture, sort of the selfie he took on the morning of the murders, and we remember Dylan Mortensen in her interview said she believes she saw the killer, and he was wearing a mask, and he was about 6 foot tall, 185 pounds, not muscular, thin, but athletically built, and he had bushy eyebrows. And then lo and behold, we see this photograph. And then, some of these other creepy photographs that were found on his phone. And we all remember also the balaclava, which apparently was the mask that he, if you believe it was Bryan Kohberger, that he was wearing that night. And that, again, they have evidence of him buying that. I believe that was at Dick's Sporting Goods. So they have more and more and more circumstantial evidence. However, his attorney, Ann Taylor, wants to put this case off because she doesn't have enough time prepared. But then we also have to remember this. The victims here, Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Zana Knodel, and Ethan Chapin, and their families. We've looked at the Gonzalez's through this case, who've been somewhat the spokespeople for this case. And their rights have to be considered too, that this is dragged on for 2.5 years. My thing is to get this case moving, and he can get a fair trial, Bryan Kohberger. And if the judge keeps allowing the defense to put this case off, when is it going to go? Isn't that not unfair to the victims and to the victims' families?
Like this one. Prosecutors say Kohberger bought a K-bar knife, sheath, and sharpener on Amazon in March of 2022, 8 months before the murders. Kohberger was arrested more than 6 weeks after the murders at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, and a lawyer representing him at the time said that Kohberger told him that he was eager to be exonerated. Now, the trial is scheduled to begin in August in Ada County, Idaho. That's where Boise is located. But Kohberger's lawyer, Ann Taylor, she says she's simply not ready and she needs more time to review discovery and prepare a defense. Taylor wrote in her request for a continuance, cutting off this review before counsel can complete it would significantly prejudice Mr. Kohberger. The state's case is circumstantial. Mr. Kohberger was not identified as a person of interest until weeks after the crime, and after he was identified, law enforcement ceased investigating all other possibilities. While counsel can't explain this in trial, every experienced trial lawyer knows that trials are essentially story battles, high-stakes duels where the prosecution and defense each tell competing narratives about the same set of events. Ultimately, the jury decides which story feels more true and more coherent. Even though the burden of proof rests with the prosecution and the defense bears no burden at all, humans are driven by narratives. That reality forces the defense to counteract the state's narrative with another compelling story. Adding to Taylor's request was the Dateline special that aired last month. That special unveiled evidence that had not been revealed and included video from a house on King Road that showed suspect vehicle 1. It also revealed Bryan Kohberger's Google searches and selfies of Kohberger wearing a black hoodie and claims that he was searching serial killer Ted Bundy. Bundy went to college in Washington State and killed women across the country, including sorority sisters. Judge Hippler was furious about the special and made it clear last month he wants the source of the leak ferreted out.
In the closed session this morning, I indicated to you I am going to be entering an order requiring the retention of records by the state, and I'm going to write another one extending that to the defense as it relates to violations of the non-dissemination order. I'm going to give you a copy of what that order is going to look like that I will execute likely over the lunch hour. It does require some action on your part. counsel. And as I indicated, I would be open to a request for a appointment of a special prosecutor.
My question is, okay, he's livid. Judge Hippler is livid about the leaks to Dateline NBC. And it's been revealed that they believe that the leaks came from the prosecutorial side of the fence, not the defense. Can they conduct this investigation and appoint a special prosecutor while simultaneously moving forward to this case, moving forward to the prosecution of Bryan Kohberger? And I believe, yes, they can. 100% they can. This is no reason to delay the case because it doesn't affect the case in regards to the evidence against Bryan Kohberger. The evidence is there. Is the judge going to throw the evidence out of the real trial because someone leaked it to Dateline NBC? Leaks happen in every single criminal trial in this country. However, this is a international case. It's on the front page. It's on the consciousness of everyone out there. So, but this is quite disturbing because is this going to interrupt the actual trial? And all of a sudden now, Ann Taylor, oh, this is horrible. We need to take a 2-year break because of this till the special prosecutor finds out who leaked the information to Dateline NBC. I don't think so. I think we need to move forward. I think this case needs to get on with. And if they keep putting this case off, when is it going to go? And what kind of hardships is that creating for the families, for the community? Let's not forget Musco, Idaho. This was the biggest murder case ever occurred in that town. So all of these things are reasons I believe that the case should move forward. And it's, I think it's a stalling tactic by Ann Taylor. Let's go back to Annette Levy.
For a continuance. They wrote, "It is time to try this case. Defendant was arrested in late December of 2022 and was indicted in May of 2023. He successfully moved to transfer venue to Ada County. In October 2024, this court entered its scheduling order setting deadlines for pretrial motions and expert disclosures. Defendant complied with those deadlines without moving for a continuance, including by disclosing 6 expert reports for the penalty phase, disclosing over 2,100 pages of purported mitigation materials, listing 55 penalty phase witnesses, and identifying 132 exhibits he may introduce during the penalty phase of trial." Prosecutors are also pushing back on Taylor's claim that the defense needs more time to complete a social history investigation. They claim Kohberger's lawyers have had plenty of time to uncover information about a car accident Kohberger was involved in as a child, which is listed under trauma history, along with any history of neglect or maltreatment, which prosecutors say there's no evidence of that is relevant. Kohberger's struggles with addiction are also expected to come up if there is a penalty phase. Prosecutors are also pouring cold water on Taylor's argument about the Dateline special and pretrial publicity. They write, "There is no doubt that the publicity surrounding this case, including but not limited to a recent Dateline TV show containing non-public evidence, poses challenges for the court and both parties. The state reaffirms its commitment to comply with the court's non-dissemination order, to do everything in its power to prevent leaks, and to assist in determining which person or persons provided non-public information to Dateline. However, defendant's reliance on the Dateline episode to support his motion is misplaced for several reasons." I spoke with defense attorney Philip Dubé about what both sides are saying.
We don't win trials by ambush. If counsel for the defense is saying that they are not ready and they have good cause for needing to put it over, then so be it. You don't get a leg up in winning a prosecution merely because your opponent is not prepared. That's not how we try cases, particularly in a capital case. Again, we're not talking about somebody passing a bad check, joyriding a car, or a simple assault and battery. We're talking about a quadruple homicide. They're seeking the death penalty.
So what's going to happen at this hearing? Well, the part about the continuance will be open to the public. We'll get to see that. And both the prosecution and the defense, they'll be allowed to present their arguments for and against a delay in the start of the trial. But then there will be a closed portion of the hearing where Kohberger's lawyers will fight for their request to present evidence of alternate suspects at trial. Prosecutors are opposed to that, but Ann Taylor has said she's investigating a lead.
I think
this is the part that I find most egregious, all right? If she had an alternate suspect, wouldn't that have been put forth to the court already? And wouldn't they have evidence of such? Right now, is she going to just present this Hail Mary pass into the end zone? And then it's all going to be determined whether, if Judge Hippler says, oh, yes, you have good evidence there, or he's just going to say, that's the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard. There's no evidence here. This is just you bringing up a name. And she got this information allegedly from a tip, one of the 10,000 tips that the police received during the investigation of this case. So isn't a little bit late in the game? Who is this alternate suspect? What is his name? How much investigation has been done to find out the information you have on this? Is it something called evidence? Evidence, something that makes something else apparent. That is evidence. Is there any evidence from the defense here? Or is it, again, another Hail Mary pass? I think I'm getting annoyed with this defense team here. All right? Let's take this case to trial where it belongs. I mean, just the continuance. Why does Ann Taylor want a continuance in this Koberger trial? Because she's not ready. Is that our fault? Is that the prosecution's fault that she's not ready? After 2.5 years, she's not prepared? Judge Hippler, if you're listening, do not grant this request for continuance. Let's get moving with this case. The biggest reason you need to get moving with this case is right here. These 4 kids that lost their lives here. Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Zaina Knodel, and Ethan Chapin, and their families. Their families deserve a speedy trial. I know the defendant deserves a speedy trial, although he waived his right early on to a speedy trial. So he waived that. So he can't even complain about it. But yet he's innocent till proven guilty, or he's presumed innocent till proven, but he's sitting in jail. So is that okay? Does that mean him sitting in jail, does that perhaps mean that Ann Taylor thinks that she can't beat this case? And then they have to move on to the death penalty phase of this case? So these are some of the questions I have. But there's lots of more legal maneuverings here by both the prosecution and the defense before this case proceeds to trial, right? So all of this circumstantial evidence, which many people who follow this case just poo-poo it, and I love that word, poo-poo, that the circumstantial evidence, all they have is circumstantial evidence. I think Ann Taylor is a little bit nervous about all this circumstantial evidence that you can downplay and say, oh, it doesn't mean anything. Well, obviously, it means something, because Ann Taylor, Bryan Kohberger's defense attorney, is requesting a delay in the trial. And whether or not Judge Hippler grants it remains to be seen. So we will keep following this as it goes along, as it moves along, and see what the decision is of Judge Hippler and whether or not he will grant a delay of this trial or continuance in legalese. Anyway, folks, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories, retired NYPD Sergeant. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll stay on top of this. I'll see you next time. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.